I was watching the man who's in studio with me this morning on television during the week, not on Fair City, where you'd usually see him at the moment, but on the TV documentary series The Tenements, which started its rerun last Tuesday night at 10 on TV3. And I had actually, Bryan Murray, a very good morning to you.
Good morning.
I'd missed this the first time around, but it's a fascinating series. I mean, when you're showing what you describe as the hidden Dublin, the Dublin of the tenements of the late 19th and early 20th centuries, and the utter poverty and degradation of the living conditions.
I think we've kind of forgotten in many ways. It's so many years have passed now that how bad things were, particularly in the Ireland of 2013 now. The notion of people having no bread to eat and no food, no heat in the room, and serious poverty where it's a case of life or death. In this city of ours, 100 years ago,
that was marvellous. And you had all the old buildings and the archive photographs. And when you take us inside, you took us inside. You brought to Henrietta Street and took us inside the buildings and showed us all the number of families that would have been crammed inside here with maybe one or two, what were they called, dry toilets or dry
toilets. And next week you'll see, actually, Áine, you'll see I go through the census that was taken in 1930 and 1950, I can't remember which, and it gives the number of people who actually lived in Henrietta Street. In one particular house there were over 85 people living in it. And you can imagine the cramped conditions with one toilet at the back. And the interesting thing was that if you were unlucky enough, or in a way, I suppose, lucky enough to have a warm bed, none of the front doors were open. But if you were the one that was living or sleeping in the bedroom that was nearest to the front door, you couldn't really risk getting up and going to the toilet out the back, because when you came back, somebody would have come in and taken your bed.
Literally.
That's how bad it was.
And the remarkable thing was, your family has a connection back to
that's why I get
Street.
very emotional about it, I have to be honest. But that's why the whole thing was kind of a labour of love for me. It started with Strumpet City when we were doing Strumpet City in 1979. My Aunt May, who's still with us, thank goodness, I hope she's listening. I was telling her it was the talk of the town that Strumpet City was going to be shot and all the rest of it. And then she said, "I believe you're doing Strumpet City, congratulations, where are you shooting it?" And I said, "Henrietta Street." I kind of, like a lot of Dubliners, didn't quite know where Henrietta Street was.
By the way, remind people where it is.
It's opposite Bolton Street Tech. You know, if you go down Parnell Street and you turn right and you go up to Bolton Street, it's across the way from that, by the King's Inns, what we'd call the King's Inns. It's a beautiful, beautiful street. It was one of the first streets of big houses that were built by the British for judges and for very important people in Dublin, and they had servants and all the rest of it. And then when the Act of Union was passed in 1801, that meant that everybody went back to London again. The Parliament was taken back to London, and all those houses became absolutely derelict and became tenements, basically. And the unfortunate news for us all is that after we got our freedom, they got worse.
But what was your own family connection?
But my aunt said, "Oh, you're Henrietta Street. Your mum and I used to live there," and I said, "Oh." I was completely shocked. And she said, "Did she never tell you?" And I said, No. Seemingly they lived there anyway from 1936 to 1940. The family fell on hard times. My grandfather was missing for a period of time. I don't know whether he was in disgrace or what exactly happened. But they went and they lived in what was essentially where they kept the horses out the back, turned into a kind of a meuse. And they lived there for 4 years. Now, my mother...
When you asked her, did you ask her about it?
I asked her. I said, May was talking about you living in Henrietta Street. "Oh, not at all. Don't mind her, Aunt May. You don't look backwards. You just
She
look
was
to the
ashamed,
future."
was she?
She was ashamed. Ultimately, there was a shame attached to it, and that's the thing that's kind of interesting about. One of the many things that's interesting for me, at least, about the whole notion of poverty in that particular time was the shame of it all. But she was also determined, because she was such a powerful lady. She was determined because of that experience, I'm convinced, that she was going to make sure that the next generation, when she had her own children, me being the eldest, there was nothing like that going to happen. We were going upwards and onwards. So that drive was there, as there has been for the mammy at the centre of the household in lots of places.
It's interesting, isn't it, what you say there about the shame, the totally different attitude to poverty, and like it was people's personal responsibility that they were poor and they living in these appalling circumstances.
There's nobody to go, there's no door to knock on to say, "Give me a handout here, please. Can you help me pay the rent this week?" If you didn't have money for the rent, that's the way it was. When men couldn't find work, they had a job to do, and that was they had to get out early morning and find wood to put in the fire to keep the fire going, because that's how the family survived. If there was no wood in the fire, there was no hope of survival.
And that's you see that at the end of Strumpet City, which, by the way, again, I went back and I was watching it again yesterday, and again, it is fantastic. I just was watching it, and I'd forgotten how good it was. But when you see Bob at the end, the character you play, Bob Fitzpatrick, who's been blacklisted because he joined the strike and he can't get work now, he can't support. So what does he do?
He has to go away to the war, which most of the working classes did. It was the lockout as well, as we remember, on 1913, 100 years this year. So it's interesting that Strumpet City is the UNESCO One City, One Book this year as well. So I think it's a nice kind of completion. And James Plunkett, who wrote it, would have been absolutely delighted of that. But yeah, Bob went away to war, and like thousands and thousands, we in Dublin had more people, more men per head in Dublin than any other city except for London. In the British Isles. So we sent all those men away to die, and most of them, of course, didn't come back.
That's funny, because Strumpet City was kind of, it's the most celebrated costume drama, really, that RTE has ever done.
Yes.
But when I was looking at it again yesterday, and anyone can see it on YouTube, by the way, the whole 7 episodes are there. When you look at the grittiness of Strumpet City, compared to, there's lots of historical drama around now on all the various channels, but they're all kind of chocolate boxy.
Yes.
I'm not sure Strumpet City could get made these days.
Well, I think you're absolutely right. I think that we have a kind of a glossy BBC. I'm not saying anything against the BBC, but you know what I mean, costume drama prism that we look at when we're doing period drama. At that particular time, it's very interesting for me, because growing up, and now as an older man, I see that most all of the programs that I've been involved in over the years, whether it's Strumpet City, whether it was Blood Brothers on the stage, whether it was Brookside, or whether it's Fair City, all of the programs that have been the most popular things that I've been involved in have all been, without exception, to do with social history. Because we don't have, of our generation at least, Áine, I'm saying our, if you don't mind, sort of, our generation, we were taught political history more than we were taught social history. So now Ireland is beginning to kind of look back at itself and have a look.
Well, let's play a clip for listeners, for anyone who hasn't. If you haven't watched Strumpet City before, give yourself a treat this weekend and go away and find it on YouTube. Here's a small clip of Bob Fitzpatrick telling your screen wife, Mary, that your character Bob is going on strike, that big fateful decision.
It's a lockout. Anyone who sides with Larkin.
I thought you were going to resign from the union when they made you foreman.
I know. But then Barney Mulhall had his accident and all. That was terrible enough without me adding to it. He gave his whole life to the union, and I felt like a renegade. Today I couldn't stay in and draw wages on a Saturday while the others were locked out, now could I?
Are you asking me to tell you you were right? How long will it last?
I don't know. This time the employers are organised. They're out to smash the union. One or the other is going to have to give way. It's been threatening for years, and now it's finally come. But it mightn't be so bad. The strike pay is going to be 10 shillings a week. To begin with, anyway.
To begin with? Oh, God, just as we were getting straight. I'd hope next year to have a proper house away from this.
But maybe we still can. I thought that if things got really bad, now I'm not saying that they will, we could send the children down the country to your father for a bit. So maybe you could go with them yourself. That'd be even better. When you think about it, we've a lot to be thankful for. We've a good deal more than most.
Yeah. We've more to sell and pawn.
The dashed hopes, you can feel the dark clouds gathering there around Bob and Mary Fitzpatrick. If we're talking about Strumpet City, it was, of course, the novel by James Plunkett, and that series adapted by Hugh Leonard, so it's no wonder the standard of writing was so high.
And the actors have been Cyril Cusack and David Kelly and Brendan Caldwell. And
we were just saying, when Rashes dies,
Rashes.
I think it's actually the saddest thing anyone's ever come up with.
Well, I'm reading the book at the moment because of the UNESCO celebrations coming up. And reading it, I can hear David Kelly's voice.
It's not all doom and gloom, though. You've kind of an Ursula Andress moment at the start, don't you, coming out of the sea?
I never thought of that. Yeah. In my thong. No, not.
No, all very respectably. But it was just, I was laughing just seeing you coming out
It was
of the
such a
waves.
cold day we did that. Tony Barry, the director, you know what I mean? We were supposed to do it out in Sandymud, but we ended up doing it in Greystones because we attempted to do it. Of course, in filming, you always end up doing a scene getting into the sea when it actually lashes right in, it's freezing cold, but we ended up doing it in Greystones. Yeah, that's the first meeting with Mary, yeah.
But anyway, that's all kind of Strumpet City and Henrietta Street. You didn't grow up in Henrietta Street, it was Drimnagh.
No, I grew up as a young boy when I was born in the Coombe. I was taken back home to Drimnagh, but we just stayed there for a short time. I was brought up in 29 Sarah Place in Island Bridge with my brothers Padraig and Stephen and my mum and dad, and that was where I shot all my Indians and learned, you know, whatever I learned.
And were you guys posh enough for a bathroom, or
no.
do you remember a tin bath in front of the
Oh
fireplace?
God, yes,
on
absolutely,
Saturday
and
night?
upside down in the shed, you know, during the week, and then it was taken in. We didn't have running water. Now, this sounds like a Monty Python sketch. You were lucky. We lived in shoebox in the middle of motorway, but we didn't have running water, and we didn't have an indoor toilet, and we were poor, but we didn't know we were poor.
But you didn't feel badly?
No, not at all. My father worked on the railways all his life, and my mother was the kind of woman that she could turn a slice of bread and a bunch of scallions into a banquet, you know, for your tea, and that was it.
And when your mammy saw her handsome oldest son going off and taking to the boards and all the rest, she must have been worried about you, and she wanted you to do a trade, didn't she?
She did, yeah.
Have something to fall back on.
It's a good Dublin. It's a good Dublin value, isn't it? You know what I mean? Yes, you can. Yeah. Oh God, I want to be an actor. Oh yeah, we guessed that. Yeah. Well, that's fair enough. We don't know how you do that, son. So you're going to have to get something to fall back on just in case it doesn't work. So my Uncle Harry and my Uncle Steve and my Uncle Paddy were electricians. So that's what my mum knew about. So I was sent off to serve my time with a man called Peter Kerwin in Mount Street. I hope he's well. And had I not gone to be an apprentice electrician in a strange kind of a way, I wouldn't probably be sitting here on you, because it was through doing that I got my way into the Abbey Theatre. I mean, there was no way that I could go from where I was to where I wanted to go. There was no...
Because there's all kinds of ways into acting now.
Now
for
there
kids,
is. Now you can go on the net and find out where you go. And
more
there's drama schools.
then, yeah.
But for a working class boy in Island Bridge to want to be an actor, that's like wanting to be a pearl diver in Tahiti. Do you know what I mean? No chance at all.
But you did it, and you were pretty successful. And before long, you know, the Abbey and then on to London, you must have felt that the world was opening up to you.
Well, I was completely surprised by it all. I was just surprised and excited and just taking every day as it comes, because that's the way you do it as a freelancer. You can't count on anything or bank on anything. And if this is all that it is, well, that's fine. And one day turned into another, and here we are 42 years later, still doing it. So I thank, you know, the powers that be there for it. But yeah, it was I've been blessed, I suppose.
But London in the 70s, you're in Carla Lane's Bread. You met Paul and Linda
I did.
McCartney and the Queen.
Yes,
that must have been all pinching yourself.
I did, yeah. It was nice meeting the Queen Mother, you know. And then you see the King's speech, and you see, you know, Helena Bonham Carter playing her with a twinkle in her eye, which she had. I was very naughty. We were told, you see, when you met the Queen Mother, you don't speak to royalty. You wait till they speak to you. And they were coming around being introduced, Princess Margaret and herself. And Terry Wogan told us, you know, no talking to the royalty now, with the twinkle in his eye. So I thought, that's for the English people, really. I don't come under that schedule because I'm Irish. So we had a circus at the end of the variety performance. And when she came along, I was shaking her hand and introduced it. And I found myself saying, "Did you enjoy the show, ma'am?" And she stopped and looked at me, and I thought, I'm going to be beheaded. And her eyes lit up, and she said, "I love the circus. We always went to the circus. We took the family to the circus."
And you said ma'am and not mom. It is ma'am.
It's ma'am, to rhyme with ham, I believe. Yeah,
yes,
yeah.
yes. And again, like life was going from, you know, absolutely going well. You Bread, Shifty Boswell, that was a great role for you. Flurry Knox in the Irish RM, that a role you really wanted?
Yes. Brilliantly written, Somerville and Ross. I mean, one of the great Irish books, which in a way, before the Irish RM, it has to be said, was kind of sidelined because it was Anglo-Irish writing. But it's eminently Irish of a particular type. And then hearing that it was going to be done and reading the books and going, my God, what a part that is. That's, you know, there are a few good parts like that for young men. And then getting it and just relishing in it. It was at a stage as well where I was kind of beginning to feel, you know, maybe I can do this, you know, maybe it's all about confidence, really.
And it brought you and Peter Bowles together as well.
Yeah, that was an important milestone.
Because I remember watching, and there was a real sense watching the Irish RM that you guys were having as much fun making it as anybody might be watching it.
Absolutely, because he adored the books and knew the books long beforehand and had wanted to do them before. And when we met, he kind of said, you know, this is the best part for a young man that's probably been written in Irish literature. And we had to go for it 110%, which meant having to learn to ride a horse, which was, you know, another story. But anyway, there you go.
Were you good at it? No, I won't actually. No, don't.
At the beginning, the lad said, "There's no way this lad is going to do this. Come on!" And I had to be good at it. But what they said was they'll put glue on my bottom and stick me to the saddle, and eventually I got it. You just click into it. It's like one day you don't eat olives, and the next day you do.
Yeah, but they're scary because they're big.
No, they're big.
Anyhow, let's play. Actually, this clip involves a horse. This is the first time Flurry Knox meets the Irish RM, played by Peter Bowles, and he's trying to sell him
in the
horse.
rain.
Yes, in the rain. You'll hear lots of rain. And a little bit of Neil Tobin in this one. Have a listen to this.
Hello, Major Yates. It's rather soon to be paying you a visit, but I thought you might be in a hurry to buy a horse.
It's rather wet for horse stealing.
Ah, that's nothing when you're used to it. You ought to throw your leg over her, and you can take her over a fence or two if you like. She's a nice, flippant jumper.
Throw a leg? I wasn't really looking for a jumper. I wanted a horse to drive, not to ride.
Oh, well then, the Quaker here will suit you right enough. She's a fine raking horse and harness. Slip her! Bring her up there now so the Major can see her.
Will you try to look like a horse that you camel? Your Honour will drive her with a sappy hay in her mouth.
She's quite a bargain now. £25.
You mean if I give you £25 for that horse I can get in out of the rain?
I hope that might prove a consideration with you.
It's gas listening to that. We've had a message in from Tara in Dublin, and she says Flurry Knox was her very first crush.
Ah, Tara. That's good. Thanks, Tara.
And lots of calls in, actually, about Strumpet City. One nice one here from Brendan. They're a small homeschooling family, and they watched Strumpet City recently as an exercise in social history. They want RTE to show it again, particularly during the forthcoming period of the remembrances in 1913 and all that. And you'll be doing readings, you were saying,
I'll be doing readings for
year.
UNESCO for the opening of the One City, One Book, yes, sometime around April. So that'll take place in Dublin Castle, and there'll be general celebrations, and people will be encouraged to read the book. It's not a book just for Dubliners. We have to remember as well, on just as a side, that the people involved in the tenements in Dublin were from all over the country. Because of the poverty in the country was so bad, everybody gravitated towards the capital city. So it's not just Dubliners, it was Irish people in general.
That's actually one of the things I enjoyed about the tenements, because you have that explained. How do you go from being, in quite a short space of time, these beautiful Georgian buildings, down to, being crammed full of poor people, and basically the rich people scarpered out to the posh suburbs of Clontarf and Ballsbridge and all the rest, when all the poor people came to town after the famine. Now, but anyway, Flurry Knox in comedy, and you're doing terribly well, and people are having crushes on you and fancying you, and life is great. And then you go from that to the total opposite. You do this evil Trevor Jordache in Brookside.
But that's what it's about, really. I think, being an actor, all of those characters that you've played, they were all the hero. Bob Fitzpatrick, our poor Bob.
But were you getting bored with yourself? Were you getting bored with your image?
No, I wasn't getting bored with my image, but I wanted to do something else. I wouldn't put it away and say I'm never going to do that kind of a part again, but I'd like to kind of show something else. Because my interest in being an actor all the time was to be able to look through as many different characters' eyes as you can. And to be able to bring out as many different aspects of yourself, your misgivings, your vulnerabilities, meaning my vulnerabilities, your fears, your joy, your elation. But it's nice to be able to delve into the other side as well. And I was constantly saying to my agent at the time, can I play something harder?
Describe Trevor Jordache, because anyone who saw it will remember it very clearly, because we were all going, oh my God, and he ends up justifiably buried in the garden.
He's a middle-class man, maybe from Ireland, we're not quite sure. He's a manager of a building society. He's a very nice man.
Respectable,
very respectable,
handsome,
very respectable,
charming.
Handsome, charming. He a good dresser, nice clothes.
Evil.
But unfortunately has a little small thing. I mean, the Jimmy Savile thing this morning, appearances and reality. He has been violent with his wife for a number of years, and has been violent with the children to begin with. He's been told to stay away, and she's got a barring order. It opens up, the first episode of Brookside opened up with them walking by the house number 10 in Brookside Close and hearing a scream in the middle of the night, a young girl having a nightmare. The scream was the opening of the story of Trevor Jordache. And we find that they're hiding away in this particular house, the family, from this man who was the abuser. He finds out where they are. He's a lovely, charming man. He goes and he meets the people in the community, in the shops, and they think, oh, what a nice man he is. And eventually gets back into the house and starts to abuse the daughter and the wife.
He's driven to give him his comeuppance.
And then she says the only thing we can do is actually do away with him. So they poison him and bury him in the back garden. He's gone.
Patio's never looked the same.
Patio's never looked the same.
And the police in Manchester, they use clips, those Brookside clips of Trevor Jordache in their police training.
That's correct. Yeah, I was stopped by a policeman once that actually said, "Oh, you're Trevor Jordache, how are you, mate?" I said, "That's fine." I said, yeah. He said, "No." He said the domestic violence unit actually uses the whole 11 or 12 episodes that I was in to actually say, this is what to watch out for, and this is how it works. And so, we have to remember as well, only going back, that was in the mid-90s. At that particular time, soaps hadn't taken on the kind of agendas or the storylines that they do now. So domestic violence hadn't been taken out of the closet and put into the middle of the room to have a good look at it.
And Brookside, in a way, was the series that kind of pushed a new level of reality back into the soaps, because all the other mainstream
Absolutely.
soaps then
I mean, suddenly the thing that is regarded as, it's a soap and it's more on the tabloid area. Suddenly soaps were being discussed in the broadsheets. Mary Holland did, I remember this one particularly. She wrote a fantastic piece in The Observer about how Brookside was actually doing something that was invaluable for the community and for women in particular, and that this should be embraced and watched. So that it suddenly, soap found its raison d'etre, it's a reason to live there.
So your life kind of went crazy afterwards, you've said.
It kind of did in a way, because I mean there was getting police escorts on one day into studio because somebody had been, unfortunately, poor man had been living with a woman who had been abused by her former partner, who was fine, and then during watching Brookside, she reverted back and was being upset again, and he said he was going to get that Trevor Jordache. So that was fine, and then it kind of the press was all kind of give us a story about this and all the rest of it, and you became a kind of a celebrity kind of thing, so I wasn't very much into that. At the same time, I was doing a series of ads for American television, the Irish Spring, and they were always asking me to come over and stay in America. Come over and we'll get you a green card and it'll be fine. So I said to my wife, Juliet, at the time, let's go and give it a go. So we decamped to Los Angeles for 2 or 3 years.
And were you dreaming of Hollywood and movies, or was it just...
I was dreaming of more work, really. I have to be honest and say, now at this age, you get to know yourself, as I hope we do as we grow older. You get to know yourself a little better. I've always wanted to be on television. When RTE opened up, first of all, in 1962, and I saw the black and white plays with Ray McAnally in them, and Anna Manahan and Jim Norton, them, and all of those kind of plays that were on. Michael Judge writing that play and all. How do I remember all these names? I was only 12 and 13. That's what made me want to be an actor on television. So going to the States, I thought I'd like to do more television work, which I did. I did Mrs. Santa Claus with Angela Lansbury and a lot of voiceovers, and was doing the commercial. But the gloss of America kind of wore off a little bit, and I kind of wanted to come back to the UK and the life that I'd kind of known,
Mm-hmm. So it didn't work out for you. But there's a couple, people here, remembering you as Flurry Knox forever. They still call you that, but you were terrifying in Brookside. But another call, please ask Bryan what his views are now on his Poga's Wonderland venture during our boom years, because your life is going along, and you decide you're going to be an entrepreneur, you're going to be a businessman, and you... What was that all about? Well, Poga's Wonderland.
It was an attempt by myself and my business partner at the time. It was an attempt to create something that we don't have in Ireland, and still don't have in Ireland, and that was a theme park, a family day out venue. So I'd lived in America and I'd been to Disneyland many times, and I've got 5 children, so I know what it's like, and the joy and the enjoyment that people, adults and children, get in going and visiting a place like that. And we did a lot of research, so I put 3 or 4 years totally aside, didn't take any salary, wasn't earning any money because I dedicated myself to this. We went looking for some investment, we got investment, we opened the gates, and it went boom. Was
it a bit of Celtic Tiger madness? Were you thinking you
well, it's interesting that you say
be
that.
Be an entrepreneur instead of an actor?
No, it wasn't. Not from the. It's an interesting question, because looking back at it on it now, I often think that we went looking for investment, and there wasn't one single person ever said to us in the years that we were putting this together, that this wasn't a good idea. This was an idea definitely that should be taken and whose time had come. And yet, when we went for investment, there was very little money available for people to invest. Now, I wonder if that was the beginning of...
When was this?
2004 was when it opened. And in 2004, we opened the gates. But I'm inclined to think now that maybe that was the uncovering of the notion that there wasn't as much money around as we thought that there was.
Except... Even then, I remember hearing you on Liveline at the time talking about it. It was €85 pop for a family ticket.
It wasn't 85. That was completely. That was a complete misconception. That was a family ticket for 85.
For a family ticket, that's what I said. 85 for a family ticket.
There was nothing else to be paid.
But nobody knew who Pogo was. Like normally, you know, if I go to Disney, they have all the Disney characters, so I know I'm going to see Mickey Mouse and yada yada.
Yeah.
Who was Pogo? Why would I want to spend €85 taking my family to see Pogo?
Well, it's the same as I would imagine it's the same notion that we were appealing to people who would know the idea of the concept that we were putting together. This is a children's character who had a show as well as a number of rides, etc., etc., etc. And there was enough. Every advertisement that we had there was a photograph of the character of Pogo that we had a book out at the time.
In other words, what I'm asking, I suppose, is do you think you had the wrong idea to begin with?
No,
in that
not
sense?
I don't at all. I really don't, and I look forward to the time when there will be a theme park opening up. And in the research that we did, we found that the ideal place for it was Kildare, and the Kildare Enterprise.
And the Gough side.
And Kildare is the ideal place because of the configuration of the people around it.
But they didn't come, Brian.
They didn't come. No, they didn't. But that's not to say that the same thing again opening up won't have a different reaction to people, because at the end of the day, it was my decision. I wanted a once-off payment, and you come along, you can spend the whole day with your family, bring your own food if you like, and the day is yours.
But it didn't work out. The numbers didn't come, and it collapses and it leaves. I mean, how much did you end up owing in the end?
I can't
Yourself
remember.
And your partner, Kathleen Lamb, wasn't it?
I think altogether with various things, I suppose it was nearly €2 million.
And that included, didn't it, the students who'd been working for you over the summer? Did they all get paid?
They got paid at the end. The man who did the liquidation, John McStay, said at one stage that we were the only people that he'd ever known who were going into liquidation with the VAT man actually owing him money. So the VAT man owed us money. So the money that we got back from the VAT, the students got paid.
But the whole thing was pretty nasty, because it goes on and there's court cases and the DPP brings charges that are dropped.
Dreadful. Yeah. It was awful. It was a nightmare. The worst period. It was absolutely terrible.
But do you have personal regrets? Do you feel kind of
course.
I mean, because it's a story we've seen repeated many times.
Of course,
many times
since. Yeah, of course.
But at the time,
and having absolutely, I take full responsibility, and I'm devastated and heartbroken that it had to happen. And one of the things that you look now and you see that, as you say, that it's happening all over the place with people with businesses, and your heart goes out to them, because nobody starts off with a business thinking or wanting it to go down. You start off with the best of intentions. This was a joyous thing that we were putting together, and as I say, we took the business plan to people who actually said, "This is fantastic. It's near time that we had a theme park in Ireland," and we're still past the tipping area for the number of children that we have to warrant having a theme park.
So all those court charges, that case was withdrawn, and so you weren't found guilty of anything. But the debts were. I mean, were you left broke? What impact did it have on your family?
Well, I lost most all of any money that I had, and we hadn't taken, not one penny did we take from it, not one single solitary cent did my business partner and I take from it, which I suppose shows a great deal of naivety on our part as much as anything else.
And the strain of all of that.
Oh, it was appalling. You want to crawl into a hole and die. Awful.
Your marriage went around that time, did it?
It did, yeah. Kind of, I was told by a number of men and women who had conversations with, who were in the same situation with failed businesses. They said relationships go at the same time as well. And that's what happened.
It's just such huge pressure on families,
it's just,
isn't it?
but it's understandable at the end of the day, because it's, you know, it's not a thing you want to go through again, believe me.
Áine, I'm in bed sick, was feeling miserable, so I want to thank you so much for having Bryan in today, because it's taken this caller out of themselves. I suppose, did the whole thing teach you you're better off sticking to the acting?
Well, yes, I suppose so, but I look forward to, and I hope, you know, before too long, that there is a theme park, an Irish theme park, because we're great storytellers.
The only thing I'd say is maybe it should be a character we know and love first to get people there.
Yes, perhaps indeed, yeah. But nonetheless, I look forward to being there when it opens up.
And are you still paying off money, or is that all discharged?
Yes, I'm afraid I am.
You are, and will be for quite a while?
I would imagine so, yeah.
Okay. So you go back to working as an actor. You're never short of work of that. And of course, you're Bob Charles in Fair City. You're in My Cousin Rachel at the moment at the Gate. You're also a DJ from time to time here on radio.
The two of probably of the most favourite things that I've done, I have to say, are Fair City. I adore being in Fair City. I just love Bob Charles. I love the character they've created for me. I'm delighted to be in it and very proud of it.
And it's a different kind. It must be odd for actors. You know, you're used to coming together normally for short projects and kind of being all together in a great big group and then splitting apart.
Exactly.
Whereas this is week in, week out, and some of the same faces that you'd have seen with you back in Strumpet City.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And this is the longest job. This is the longest regular job I've ever had, you know.
And does that feel different? Do you ever occasionally get a bit bored, or have to shake yourself out of it?
It's actually brought a new kind of idea to the whole notion of being an actor, and that is that it's great to see a character like Bob Charles developing over a period of time, and people actually coming up to you and noticing, and people saying to me, like they are at the moment, because of the storyline, that Bob's love of his life, Renee, played by Una Crawford O'Brien, has done him over and taken his money and scarpet, basically. And for all his arrogance and all his kind of pomposity, he's very unlucky in relationships. And
he wasn't doing that well in December, was he? Renee was giving him a hard time.
Oh, she gave him a hard time and then kind of went off. And I think he loves her. But the interesting thing is that people now come up to the man who they'd say, "Oh, I don't like Bob the way he carries on." They're saying, "Oh, Bob, you needed somebody to take care of you now, don't you?" You know. So being in a soap as good as Fair City now is the situation is that people grow with you as the character grows, and that's exciting. And it's interesting to play one character where the development of the character is seen clearly, and that brings out the different sides that we were talking about earlier. You know, the vulnerable side and the harder side.
And Renee's a bit nicer to you in real life, I think.
Sometimes, yeah.
This is Una Crawford O'Brien.
That's right, yeah.
Yeah, you had to say yes to that one, because actually I was telling my neighbour yesterday I was going to be talking to you this morning, and he says, "I saw him up the shops the other day, and was that Renee that was with him?"
Oh God, you're not. Are you actually together?
Yeah, in real life.
We are
in
together.
real life.
Yes,
I was just wondering as well about you. I mean, we had the IFTA Awards this week, and there's such a vibe now about what's going on in, you know, Irish television and Irish movies, and it's, you know, it almost seems so very easy for, you know, a talented Irish actor to kind of go from Dublin to LA.
Yes.
Very fast and very early in their career. I was wondering, in your case, in terms of, were you like maybe 10 years too early?
For what?
For that kind of pathway of success. Do you have a sense of what if about all that? That it's different for the generation today, and maybe, you know, you could have gone that big movie role and all the rest?
I think it's different for the generation today, but the ones that we hear about are ones in a couple of thousand that make it. So I think things are an awful lot harder today than they were in my day. I think I had it easy. For example, let me say that in 1970, when I got married first, I could be an actor working in the Abbey Theatre as a member of the company, go and get a mortgage, buy a house and raise a child on the salary of an actor. That isn't possible now. I mean, we hear about the people who go and they go to Hollywood and all the rest of it, and they make a movie and it's fantastic. But they're in the 0.555% of the people who are coming out of drama schools, and the work literally isn't there anymore. And the work that is there, people don't want to pay any money anymore. The vast majority of them. So I think it's the opposite, really, in a way, and that is that I was there at a lucky time when the emphasis was not on stardom, the emphasis was on wanting to be an actor to play different parts. Now people come out
and
of drama
companies
school,
where you got a proper job and a proper contract.
And a proper contract. And you work with people, like we said, like Cyril and like Brendan, you know, and Peter Bowles, and you learn your trade, and you learn how to play different roles and want to play particular roles. And you're lucky if you can go from the thing that I love, television, to stage, and have that rounded sense of a career. I don't think there's any money can compensate for that. And it's not that I feel sorry for. I encourage people to go. I have a daughter of 13, Eva, who tells me there's no doubt
Any
about
of your
it.
children going on stage?
No, but my 13-year-old Eva, she says that's it. I want to be an actress. It's done.
Does your heart sink?
No, I want to. I'd be very disappointed if they didn't. One of them didn't. It's the family business, love.
So you're going to stick with Bob Charles, and you're going to be doing more of the late dates.
Well, as I said, the two things that I'm enjoying are Fair City and Late Date. I just love doing Late Date because music is my passion as well. You see, I've been listening to rock and roll since the early '60s, and to come into this studio and sit where you're sitting and do and play the music and have the reactions coming in from people, it's just like I'm like a child in a toy shop.
And you'll be following up the Tenements with a series on the Big House, is that right?
We start that the week after next for the same production company. It's called Life in the Big House. It's about the Irish in service in the big house around the country, the downstairs, if you like. We've now kind of got used to the notion of upstairs, downstairs, with the wonderful Downton Abbey, and upstairs, downstairs, and a lot of the others. So this is one looking at the whole area of working class people going into service. A statistic that I've just read is that in the 1930s, 80% of women were in service in Ireland. 80%.
Including my granny, actually, for a while. And,
really?
yeah, it was from her I learned to make marmalade. We'll be talking about that later in the
that's
programme.
great.
But for the moment, I want to say thank you so much, Bryan Murray. It's been an absolute pleasure talking to you. Thank you very much.
Thank you. I'm glad to be here.